Gospel of John, the prologue, the very first chapter, the first few verses, actually. This is a profound text, one that many countless hours have been spent on this, one that's sort of challenged the church for centuries. So we're just going to be looking at the first 5 verses this morning. Gives us an interesting and good insight, especially to the season that we're in and kind of coming out of here. John chapter 1, beginning in verse 1. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. He was with God in the beginning. Through him all things were made. Without him nothing was made that has been made. In him was life, and that life was the light of all mankind. The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness has not overcome it. This is God's word. Join me in prayer. Father, may the words of my mouth and the meditations of our heart be pleasing to you. Grant us wisdom and guidance as we work to understand your word. Thank you so much for the grace that you have given us in Christ and the Spirit that opens our mind to such things. Thank you for all you do. May you be honored and glorified here and now. In Jesus' name, amen. I don't know what type of person you are. If you're the type of person, because there really is only 2 types, right? The people who remember names and the people who don't. Right? You always forget the people, their names that you come into contact with. Right? If you're one of those, don't worry, I won't put you on the spot and make you raise your hand. But I'm sure many of you are one of those people. You have to be. But we know why it is so important to remember a name, right? In many ways, to remember someone's name is so important because it's a doorway to get to know someone. If you don't know someone's name, if you forget their name, then how can you even get to know them on a deeper level? So it's so important in that respect. Now, believe it or not, I have one of those names that often gets messed up, but my wife is quite worse. She didn't come with me this morning, but my wife's name is Cassie. And so often people will get her name messed up. And she's told me many a story when she would answer the phone and they would say, "Hi, Kathy." And she would say, "No, Cassie's here." She would correct people. Just if you ever meet my wife, just ask her about the story how she corrected her doctor once in that way, and her doctor never said her name again. Now me, on the other hand, and you guys probably have this issue with your pastor as well, because his name is the same as mine. But my name it's not so much that people say it wrong, but so often people write my name wrong. They will write Brain instead of Brian. It would be less of an issue if my parents would have used a Y instead of an I, but I know in reality it's just because I'm so smart, right? People call me Brain instead of Brian. I take it as a backhanded sort of compliment. Well, as I said, names are so important, right? They're so important because they're a gateway. They're a doorway in many ways to helping us get to know people. And this is why it's so important for us as Christians to understand who God has revealed himself to be by the names that he gives us throughout the Scriptures. And we see one of those pictures of that name here in John chapter 1. Beginning in the first verse, and this, as I mentioned, this is a verse that has forever fascinated the church in many, many different ways. Just this one verse alone, this first verse, many a PhD has been written on this one verse. John refers to Jesus here as the Word. The Word. Why? Why does he choose to refer to Jesus as the Word? Well, there's a couple of reasons why maybe he does this. During this time period in the first century, there was a Stoic sort of philosophy that was floating around, and this idea of the Word often referred to or meant logic. Right? That's kind of the Greek word for this, logos. Logic comes from that sort of idea. And so this is part of maybe a piece of why John was using this as he was referencing Jesus as the Word here in John 1. And as part of this Stoic sort of philosophy, there's a wisdom that would come with it. And so was John trying to sort of draw people into this sort of mentality, this picture of reason, of logic, of wisdom? Well, it's possible that this is maybe at least a piece of what John is trying to do here. But it's probably not the main idea here. This Greek word for wisdom, the Greek word Sophia, it actually does not appear once throughout John's gospel. Not at all. And so this is probably not the sort of idea, the main idea anyways, that John is trying to convey here. Probably more what he's pointing to is giving different allusions to the Old Testament and the picture of the Word of God, the understanding of the Word of God that we see throughout the Old Testament. This whole chapter, and actually John's entire gospel, harkens back to what we see in Genesis chapter 1, right? You may have caught that in the very beginning of the first verse. In the beginning was the Word. If that sounds familiar, it's because Genesis 1:1 starts the same way. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. And throughout that first chapter of Genesis, we see themes of lightness and darkness coming as well. And John uses that throughout his gospel. He's also probably alluding a bit to Israel's wanderings in the desert. Later in chapter 1 and verse 14, one of the sort of home run verses of the prologue here, John uses the very word, the Greek word for tabernacle, right here in John chapter 1, verse 14. Literally, the Word became flesh and tabernacled amongst us. Probably the picture that he's alluding to more, though, is this picture that we see from Isaiah chapter 55. This very familiar verse, beginning in verse 9, that talks about how high and mighty God is and how wonderful this God of the Old Testament is. And he's comparing and drawing this allusion to the New Testament now as well. And as in Isaiah 55, verse 9, beginning in verse 9, he says this: "As the heavens are higher than the earth, so are my ways higher than your ways, and my thoughts than your thoughts. As the rain and snow come down from heaven, and do not return to it, without watering the earth, and making it bud and flourish, so that it yields seed for the sower and the bread for the eater, so is my word that goes out from my mouth. It will not return to me empty, but will accomplish what I desire, and achieve the purpose for which I have sent it." John is alluding to Jesus as God's Word, the very personification of His Word made flesh in this world, going out, accomplishing His purposes without returning void. Jesus will accomplish God's purposes on this earth. And so we gain wonderful insight, wonderful understanding to who God is as we dig into this name John gives him as the Word. It helps us to understand more about who God is and how He's revealed Himself as well. We continue looking at verse 1. I want you to pay attention to two to-be verbs here in the first verse. Two verbs and actually a preposition. Now, I know it's early in the morning and nobody likes English grammar, but this is so fascinating because it just shows us something amazing about who God is. First, we see was and with, so a verb and a preposition. And then secondly, we see was here in verse 1. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. With, He was with God. That is, the Word was distinct from God, and yet was God, we see. The Word was distinct from God, but the Word still was God. This is so important for us to grasp. We have to understand this as Christians because it, at least in part, affirms for us a picture of the Christian doctrine of the Trinity. One God, three persons, the same in essence, but three distinct persons. Essence being this indistinguishable characteristic, this intrinsic characteristic that the Trinity has, namely their Godness. Yet, this three distinct in person. The Father is not the Son is not the Spirit, and the Spirit is not the Father. Now, one objection people often put to this doctrine of the Trinity, we see it even still today, is that the word Trinity does not appear in the Bible. And we have to sort of concede that. We have to concede that it doesn't appear in the Bible. That's absolutely true. This is a term that was coined by the 2nd century theologian, Tertullian. Maybe you've heard of him. Did you see this was only maybe 150 years after the resurrection. So it was still very early that this idea, this doctrine of the Trinity began to develop, at least in name. Not that it wasn't there before, but it began to develop in name very, very early in the Christian faith. But just because the word itself is not there, it doesn't mean that this doctrine is not plainly taught throughout the Scriptures. A very familiar text, Matthew chapter 28, we get it very, very plainly and distinctly from the lips of Jesus Christ himself. When he says this in verse 19, he says, in Matthew 28, verse 19, he says, "Therefore go and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit." The Trinity from Jesus' lips. Flip it over a chapter, Mark chapter 1, when we see Jesus baptized in the beginning of Mark's gospel, we see what? We see the Trinity once again appear at Jesus' baptism. In the beginning of verse 9, it says, "At that time Jesus came from Nazareth in Galilee to be baptized by John in the Jordan. Just as Jesus was coming up out of the water, he saw heaven being torn open, and the Spirit descending like a dove. The voice, and a voice of heaven came down, 'You are my Son, whom I love, and with you I am well pleased.'" The Trinity present at Jesus' baptism, the Son baptized, the Spirit coming down on him, and the voice of the Father present with him as well. Now this is alluded to in the Old Testament as well. It is developed progressively over time as God revealed more and more of himself. But in Genesis chapter 1, in the very beginning, verse 26, we see an allusion to the Trinity as well, where God has created human beings. He says, and God said, let us make mankind in our image. Plural. This is not just plural in the English, this is plural in the Hebrew as well. The doctrine of the Trinity alluded to, taught from the very beginning of the Scriptures. The Trinity is a biblical doctrine, a doctrine that God has revealed of himself throughout time and history, most fully and completely when he revealed his Son, Jesus Christ. And this is why we as Christians worship a triune God. But the question becomes, why then? Why is this so important for us as Christians to understand? Why do we need to know this? Because the reality is this is who and how God has revealed himself to us. And if we don't acknowledge and understand God as how he has revealed himself to us, then it's as if you were calling him by another name. And if you're calling him by another name, then you are not worshiping the God of the Bible. And if you're not worshiping the God of the Bible, then you cannot call yourself a Christian. This is so important for us to understand, because we were made to worship. We were made to interact with this God because he created us. And because he created us, he purposed us as well. And we see this picture as we turn back to John chapter 1 in the 3rd verse, where he says this, through him all things were made. Without him nothing was made that has been made. All things were made by him, by God. You, me, we were made through this word, Jesus, who has been there from the beginning. Colossians 1:16 echoes this picture that all things were made by him and through him. But it adds this extra element as well, where Paul tells us that we were also made for him. You see, the problem is, though, in our current state, in our sinfulness, we cannot live according to that purpose. Not anymore. At least not in our own strength. It's still almost Christmas. So I'll use this illustration. Have you ever seen, you remember that show that they play every year at Christmas? Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer. Rudolph eventually, as he's sort of on this adventure, he comes to this island of misfit toys. Here these toys are so badly wanting to be played with and be used by children. But who wants to play with a Bob in the Box or a train with square wheels, right? These are toys that want to live according to their purpose, but can't for whatever reason it is that they have. In many ways, you, me, we are very much like these misfit toys. Only our miss is that we have rebelled against our Creator by refusing to live according to the purpose for which he has purposed us for. And in some sense, just like those misfit toys, we have been exiled to our own island of misfits. Set apart, set away from God. And for an eternity, if we don't find some means to be able to find our way friends, this is the beauty of the Christmas story. This is the beauty of the gospel, really, which comes to us in an announcement. Matthew chapter 1, we get this very familiar text of Joseph receiving the announcement of Jesus, receiving the announcement of Jesus' soon-to-be birth and taking it, of course, very badly, wanting to step away from his betrothment to Mary because of this. And we find him just about to do that when an angel visits him. Matthew chapter 1, verse 20, he says this, "But after he had quietly considered this, that is, leaving Mary, an angel of the Lord appeared to him in a dream and said, 'Joseph, son of David, do not be afraid to take Mary home as your wife, because what is conceived in her is from the Holy Spirit. She will give birth to a son, and you are to name him Jesus, because he will save his people from their sins.'" The announcement of Christmas, the announcement of the gospel of Jesus Christ, is this picture that the second member of the Trinity, the Son, the Word, put on flesh, came to our island, came to us in exile to restore us to a right relationship with God, to set us to the purpose for which we were created. This is the beautiful picture of hope we have. Where once we were in exile with no hope of return on our own, Jesus came to us, rescuing us, restoring us. He became the bridge between humanity and God himself. Where once we were in darkness, Jesus is the light of all mankind. Hope is a very interesting thing for us as humans. It is something that we desperately need. You can't live long without it. Hear stories of people losing it and they lose everything. But are we meant to live on some sort of blind hope? Like this sort of picture of when you wish upon a star, this sort of thing? The reality is, hope is only as good as the one who promises you the hope. One who makes the promise of hope to you. Jesus is the fulfillment of God's promise to us, to restore us, to give us back our true purpose. He is the hope of all humankind. The second member of the Trinity put on flesh. He became like us, showing us he is true to his promises. I pray this season you will find this opportunity to reflect, to understand, and to trust in the triune God of the Bible, the one who came down to us to free us from exile and restore us to true purpose. Let's pray.